Hey guys, tonight we slip quietly through the misty lanes of Edo, the old name for Tokyo, back when the streets were lit with oil lamps and the only traffic sounds came from Geta sandals on damp stones. You're barefoot, because apparently, you still haven't learned your lesson about travel prep, and your destination is a small umbrella shop tucked between a tofu vendor and a place that might sell eel, or might just sell rumors. The air is heavy with the earthy scent of last night's rain, and above you, worn cloth awnings drip a rhythm you might mistake for heartbeat. You pause in front of a wooden signboard, its brushstrokes faded but still proud. The kanji read, Karakasa no Sekai, the world of umbrellas. A bell tinkles overhead as you slide the door open. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're listening from somewhere interesting, or it's way past your bedtime, drop your location and local time in the comments below. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're immediately enveloped by the scent of old lacquer and persimmon oil. The shop is cluttered in that way only very precise people allow, tools hung just so, bundles of washi paper stacked like fragile cakes, and umbrellas, of course, dozens of them, leaning on every available surface like tired dancers waiting for their cue. The master steps out from behind. A screen. He's old in that hard-to-place Edo-Era way, anywhere from 45 to 106. His robe is ink-stained, and his left eyebrow twitches just enough to suggest either genius or constant annoyance. Without a word, he places a paper umbrella in your hands. It's light. Too light. The kind of light that hints at secrets. It's not for rain, he murmurs, already turning back to his workbench. It's for everything else. And just like that, you're in. In Edo, umbrellas aren't merely for weather. They're props, signals, fashion statements, even offerings. You've just stepped into a world where an umbrella can say more about your personality than your poetry. And that's saying something in a place where poetry is currency. You sit on the tatami mat, cross-legged, watching the master repair a snapped rib with alarming precision. He hums as he works, off-key and absolutely unconcerned about your presence. You notice his tools aren't anything like what you'd expect. Curved knives that resemble seashells, brushes made from mouse whiskers. Yes, actual mouse whiskers, and what looks suspiciously like a ceramic toothpick. You try to ask questions, but he waves you off. Watch first. Ask when you know enough to argue. That's the Edo workshop ethos in a nutshell. Outside, a courier dashes past the shop window with a scroll tied to his back and two umbrellas strapped across his chest like crossed swords. It's late, but the city hums. Edo never truly sleeps, at least not when it's raining. You glance again at the umbrella in your lap. The frame is delicate bamboo, split and shaved into impossibly thin spokes. The paper, washi, is slightly translucent and dyed a dusty rose, with hand-painted chrysanthemums twining around the edges. It looks fragile, but when you gently tug, at the ribs, it holds like a spiderweb in a breeze. Flexible but sure. That's the first secret of Edo umbrellas. They're meant to be seen, not just used. Walk down the main road in Nihonbashi, and you'll see lovers flirting under matching red parasols. Geisha twirling umbrellas with a flick of the wrist. Samurai balancing them over scrolls like reluctant librarians. You might even spot a monk, using his as a walking stick, pausing every few paces to adjust the tassel. Because yes, tassel position matters here. More on that later. There's an old saying in Edo. A good umbrella hides the rain. A great one hides your intentions. You start to wonder exactly what yours is hiding. You wouldn't be the first. Some umbrellas have held love notes. Others, smuggled rice. One particularly infamous design included a retractable blade, which sounds cooler than it was, considering it rusted shut during its first and only duel. Historians still argue whether the Edo umbrella industry truly began as a spin-off of temple fan making, or if it developed independently through regional bamboo craftsmanship. What's not debated is how central the object became to daily life. With over 1 million people in Edo by the early 18th century, making it one of the largest cities on Earth, you had to stand out somehow. And when you couldn't wear bright colors or show off too much wealth thanks to strict sumptuary laws, your umbrella became your loophole. The master finally speaks again. Everyone wants to talk about the paper or the paint, but it's the frame that matters. The ribs hold the soul. You nod sagely, pretending to understand, which earns you a barely perceptible grunt of approval, or indigestion. He gestures for you to follow him to the back room. You duck under hanging strings of paper tassels, pass by shelves of drying umbrellas, each tagged with handwritten names like Moon at Dusk or Rain Tiger, and arrive at a bamboo rack. Here, bundles of raw bamboo poles lean like sleepy sentinels. This, he says, tapping one with his knuckle, was cut on the third day of the third moon under a waxing gibbous. Perfect for dancing umbrellas. You try making one with solstice, bamboo, and it'll squeak every time it opens. You blink. You weren't expecting lunar harvesting practices. And yet, of course, because in Edo, nothing is done without intention, not even slicing bamboo. Word count, 171. You arrive early the next morning, still damp at the cuffs from last night's victory walk. The workshop smells faintly of old wood, oil, and fresh ink. On the table sits a tray of brushes, some thin as cat whiskers, others thick and blunt, like temple drums, and a row of shallow ceramic dishes filled with muted pigments, indigo, vermilion, pine soot black, and a green that looks like moss after a spring rain. Time to give it soul, the master says, handing you a brush with a bristle tip so fine, it might as well be made from angel eyelashes. Today, you learn that Edo-era umbrellas weren't just tools. They were statements. To walk through the rain with a painted umbrella was to tell the world something. I have taste. I am careful. Or, in some bolder cases, I'd rather die than be ordinary. Decorative painting began once the oiling process was complete and cured. If you did it before, the colors would run like bad gossip. The surface now is lightly tacky, enough to hold pigment without smudging. You sit with your best umbrella open before you, ribs taut and ready. But before you touch brush to paper, the master makes you practice on scrap, again and again until your lines curve like wind and your sakura blossoms stop looking like crushed dumplings. The most common Edo designs, you learn, were simple geometric shapes. Concentric circles, stripes, radial patterns. These weren't just aesthetic. They were practical. Circles centered the eye, stripes masked seams, and radial lines echoed the structure of the ribs beneath. The balance was deliberate, like calligraphy. You try a few arcs. Your first one wobbles like a tipsy snake. The master hums disapprovingly. You paint with your wrist, paint with your breath. So you exhale, gently, and let the next line flow from your shoulder. It straightens. Not perfect, but alive. Some umbrellas bore seasonal motifs. Plum blossoms for spring, maple leaves for autumn, snowflakes if you wanted to tempt fate. Others had animals, cranes, koi, rabbits leaping over moons. If you were wealthy enough to commission a piece, you could get poetry brushed in elegant kana along the rim. Imagine blocking the rain with a haiku. One surviving Edo umbrella, you're told, had a secret love letter painted on the inside, visible only when opened. Historians still debate whether it was ever delivered or just admired from a careful distance. You decide on a simple wave motif. Hokusai you are not, but you've stared at enough streams lately to feel confident. Your brush dips into the indigo, the color like melted dusk, and you begin. One crest, one curl, one swell at a time. The paper absorbs the pigment unevenly, giving the waves a soft, watercolor bleed. It's unintentional. It's perfect. The master watches without comment for several minutes. Then, quietly, he says, "Try layering vermilion. Just a hint." You add it. The wave tips glow like they've caught firelight. He nods. Better? There's a fringe belief, he tells you as you work, that umbrellas, once painted, took on a kind of spirit. Not quite sentient, but aware. Respectful umbrellas. Lasted longer. Ignored ones cracked in revenge. It's not an official teaching, more like an old superstition passed down in lacquered whispers. Paint like someone's watching, he advises, because something might be. The hours pass in a breeze of brushstrokes and daydreams. You paint quietly, focused, hands steady, each rib an arc of possibility. You smudge a blossom accidentally, then transform it into a bird mid-flight. The master doesn't scold you. Accidents, he murmurs, are just designs you didn't mean to think of yet. By late afternoon, your umbrella is a swirl of waves and flame-tipped crests, anchored by a ring of black pine needle brushwork near the hub. It looks both ancient and freshly rained on. You're almost afraid to open it. But you do. Slowly, carefully, letting the ribs rise like petals. The full design blossoms into view. You hold it up to the light, and the colors glow faintly through the paper, diffused like sunlight through leaves. You realize then that the painted umbrella is not meant to be admired closed, or even indoors. Its canvas is the sky. Its audience is the weather. The master examines it, runs a finger along one painted wave, taps once on the handle, then he gestures to the wall. You mount it beside your earlier plain umbrellas. It stands out, not better, just bolder, like it has something to say. You catch the master eyeing it again, his expression unreadable. You don't need praise. The umbrella speaks for itself. Later that evening, you help the master clean the brushes, rinsing them carefully in water scented with pine ash, reshaping the bristles with your fingers. He tells you that some brush makers named their best tools, not out of vanity, but gratitude. This one's called Spring Silence, he says, handing you a stubby little brush worn nearly to a nub. Painted the emperor's wife's umbrella. You blink. Seriously? He shrugs. Probably. That night, you hang your freshly painted umbrella upside down, tipped to the ceiling, to cure fully. The oil beneath the pigment catches the candlelight. It doesn't look like a tool anymore. It looks like something ceremonial. Tomorrow, the master says, you'll learn about customers. How umbrellas moved through the hands of buyers, couriers, actors, and thieves. And what it meant to lose one. You sleep under its shadow and dream of waves. You squat awkwardly beside the bamboo rack, trying not to tip over any of the delicately bundled poles. The master doesn't help. He's busy selecting a piece that, to your eyes, looks identical to the others. Tall, straight, blandly greenish. But his fingers pause on one particular stalk, and he holds it up to the light like a jeweler inspecting a diamond. This one hums, he mutters, as though that clears things up. Apparently, this next part is your turn. He hands you a small pull saw and points to a worn plank marked with faint etchings. 70 centimeters, not a sliver more. You kneel, saw in hand, trying not to tremble like someone who just realized they're being judged by the ghost of umbrella makers past. The bamboo resists you at first, then, with a soft crack, yields a perfect cut. Or, it feels perfect. He inspects it silently, then nods. You're still high on the compliment when he slides the cut piece into a curved cradle and begins splitting it lengthwise into ribs. This, you soon learn, is the first true trade secret. Edo umbrellas contain anywhere from 30 to 48 ribs, always an even number, and each rib is hand-split. No templates, no machines, just a knife and a lifetime of muscle memory. The room falls, silent except for the dry tick-tick-tick of bamboo fibers giving way. You're mesmerized. And then he pauses. Close your eyes, he says. You hesitate, then obey. The tick-tick resumes. Only now, without your vision, you hear something new. Each slice carries a different pitch, like a musical scale played through wood. The master hums along softly, matching the tone. This is how we check uniformity, he says, as if people everywhere test carpentry by ear. Split too thin, and the rib warps. Too thick, and it won't flex. The right sound tells you when it's just enough. Historians still argue whether Edo umbrella makers were trained as instrument craftsmen first, or if the comparison is more poetic than practical. Either way, the ribs must sing in harmony. That's not metaphor. That's hiring criteria. You try it. Poorly. Your rib sounds like a frog in distress. The master winces, then hands you another bamboo stalk without a word. Your apprenticeship has officially begun. By the 10th rib, your shoulders burn. By the 20th, you've mentally started a union. By the 24th, you accept that umbrella making is less gentle craft and more upper body endurance trial. And yet there's something meditative about it. You begin to feel the bamboo's resistance, anticipate its quirks. Even your poor, overworked hands begin to sync with the rhythm. The ribs, once shaped, are sanded down using what looks like shark skin, though you're assured it's actually dried horsetail grass pressed into paper. The texture's just as scratchy, though. Each rib is then steamed, bent slightly to form the elegant arc, and left to rest in a cradle lined with rice straw. You're told that if you rush this step, the umbrella will snap open like a trap and probably decapitate a pigeon. This is said with unsettling calm. As the ribs dry, you explore the rest of the workshop. There's a storage chest full of failed umbrella parts, warped ribs, cracked hubs, torn paper. Each one is labeled with the mistake that caused its death. Too damp, split late, angry that day. You're starting to get the impression that this shop treats umbrellas with more emotion than most people treat relationships. Behind, a sliding screen, you find a pile of discarded umbrella handles, some carved with lotus motifs, others plain and dark. One has been hollowed out and filled with soybeans? The master notices your confusion and shrugs. To check for pests. If the soybeans go missing, we got termites. So, yes, even the umbrella handles have their own bug-based surveillance systems. Naturally. By the end of the day, your hands are blistered, your knees bruised from kneeling, and your ribs, not the umbrellas, are sore from all the squatting and leaning and delicate wrist turns. But when the master places your first set of finished bamboo spokes into your hands, you feel oddly proud. Like maybe, just maybe, you've learned how to make sticks sing. You set the bundle down carefully, and he nods once more. Good enough. To ruin with paper. He means that lovingly. Probably. As night deepens, a light rain begins outside, and the rhythm of droplets on the tiled roof adds to the room's ambiance. In the soft lamplight, the split bamboo ribs gleam like the bones of some delicate creature, one that might leap up at any moment and flutter out the window. You're tired, bone-tired, but not ready to stop. In a corner of the room sits an old umbrella, fully open, its paper yellowed, its ribs thin as thread. The master sees you eyeing it. My first, he says simply. Took 6 months, fell apart in 10 minutes. Best failure I ever made. You ask what went wrong. He shrugs. Everything. And nothing. The wind was just in a mood. And there it is again. That Edo shrug at nature, chance, and time. The rain, the bamboo, the sound of splitting fibers, it all moves around you like a slow, forgotten waltz. You're not building an object. You're collaborating with the weather. Tomorrow, you'll begin papering your first frame. And as the rain taps more insistently against the shutters, you understand? This isn't a craft. It's weather manipulation in disguise. You wake stiff, sore, and, against all logic, excited. The workshop smells of damp bamboo and freshly ground glue, an oddly comforting mix. Today is the day you learn about washi, the traditional Japanese paper that wraps the ribs and gives the umbrella its skin, its character, its fragile but fearless shell. It's a process so precise, the master says, that even your heartbeat could throw it off. You scoff. He squints at you. You're breathing too loud. So, you hold your breath. That helps. A little. The master leads you to a long wooden table stained with countless pigment spills. Upon it, a stack of washi sheets sits under a smooth stone slab for weight. You expect something rough, but when you touch it, carefully, it's feather-light and surprisingly tough, like fabric that's been taught self-defense. This is no ordinary paper. Washi is made from the inner bark of the kozo plant, pounded until it nearly weeps, then mixed with water and neri, a mucilaginous root extract that somehow keeps the fibers suspended evenly during the sheet-making process. Historians still argue whether the exact method of producing umbrella-grade washi came from Korean papermakers or evolved separately within mountain monasteries. What's agreed upon is that the good stuff was guarded like a state secret, and for good reason. Cheap paper meant torn umbrellas, wet scrolls, and a reputation so ruined even the neighborhood cats would shun you. You watch as the master picks up a brush and begins applying a translucent glue to the back of the paper. The glue is made from rice starch. No fancy chemicals here, cooked down to a soft paste, then cooled until it has the consistency of regret. Sticky, slow, slightly sour. Your job is to gently press each sheet onto the umbrella frame, aligning the edges with millimetric precision. The trick, he says, is to stretch it just enough to avoid wrinkles, but not so much that it tears. Treat it like an awkward relative, he says. Firm, but forgiving. You try, and immediately wrinkle the paper. Twice, possibly 3 times. The master lets out a sigh that somehow conveys disappointment, compassion, and the memory of 30 ruined umbrellas. You start again. Eventually, you find a rhythm. Glue, place, stretch, breathe. Glue, place, stretch. Stop breathing so loud. It's like wrapping a skeleton in silk without offending it. Once the paper is set, the umbrella must dry fully before any painting begins. But the drying itself is an art. Too fast, and the paper pulls the ribs out of alignment. Too slow, and mildew creeps in like an uninvited relative. So the umbrella is placed near a fire, but not too close, and rotated periodically like a roasting chicken. There's even a fan nearby, the old-school kind you spin by hand. Guess whose job that is? You crank the fan while the umbrella turns slowly, wobbling like a giant parasitic flower. Outside, a street vendor yells about chestnuts. Inside, you start to sweat. Edo umbrella making is, apparently, a very warm business. While the umbrella dries, the master takes out a roll of washi scraps, painted in every color imaginable. Cherry blossom pink, cloud gray, an unsettling ochre he calls teapot regret. You'll learn that umbrella painting is less about art and more about coded language. Color combinations had meaning in Edo. Red and white could imply celebration, or death, depending on the context. Indigo hinted at restraint. Gold flecks? Well, that just meant you had money and didn't care who knew it. One quirky detail the master shares. In some Edo neighborhoods, umbrellas were also painted with subtle, directional indicators. A swirl or arrow pointed which way the handle should be held to direct water away from kimono sleeves. Because nothing was more socially disastrous than soaking your neighbor's brocade. He shows you a few antique designs. One features cranes, flying over Mount Fuji, classic. Another shows a pattern of ginkgo leaves drifting in a river, and one just has a tiny cat peeking from behind a cloud. Commissioned by a poet, the master says with a smirk. You ask if it's true that samurai used umbrella patterns as secret signals. He shrugs. Maybe, or maybe people just like patterns. Either way, I charge extra. Now it's time to test your painting skills. You're given a brush made from deer hair and told to practice on scrap paper. You make a blotchy plum blossom that looks like it lost a bar fight. The master squints. Maybe abstract, he offers generously. When it's time to paint the actual umbrella, you're only allowed to apply the base color. No flourishes, no brush poetry, no tiny cats. You dip the brush in a vat of diluted persimmon dye, which gives a soft orange glow, and begin to sweep wide arcs across the paper. The dye soaks in slowly, the brush whispering as it moves. You find yourself leaning in, breathing shallower, matching your movements to the umbrella's slow turn. The room narrows, time slows. You forget to be nervous. The master watches, then pats your shoulder. Not bad, not good, but not bad. You beam like someone who just got a gold star in umbrella kindergarten. The painted umbrella is hung to dry again, this time upside down from a rafter beam. It swings gently, like a jellyfish suspended in the air. You sit on the tatami, staring. Up at it, your fingers still stained with dye, your legs numb, your back aching, and yet somehow you feel like you've just invented fire. Outside, the rain has stopped. The evening cicadas begin their chorus, and the smell of grilled mackerel drifts in from somewhere nearby. The master opens a fresh washi parcel, nods at tomorrow's work, and says, "You'll start again in the morning." The next one, we add, reinforcement threads. That's when the real fun begins. You're too tired to groan, but somewhere deep in your aching shoulders you realize something else. You're not just making umbrellas, you're joining a centuries-old conversation, in paper and wood. You wake up with your hands curled into claws. The kind of soreness that makes you question your life choices greets you before your feet even touch the floor. But there's also something else. Anticipation. Because today, the umbrella finally, gets its strength. Reinforcement threads. The master explains it as though he's revealing the blueprint of a fortress. You already know the umbrella ribs are delicately split bamboo, the paper is handmade washi, and the glue is rice-based. Lovely. But without the addition of silk or cotton threads, the whole thing is, as the master puts it, just a pretty collapse waiting to happen. So you begin with thread. Not any thread, of course. It must be tightly spun cotton or silk, often dyed to match or contrast with the umbrella's colors. Today's thread is indigo, deep, moody, and practically glowing in the light that filters through the paper-covered windows. You sit cross-legged with the half-dried umbrella in front of you. The paper is firm now, the ribs beneath slightly, visible like the veins of a leaf. Your task is to weave thin threads through a pattern of tiny holes previously poked into the paper. Holes you hadn't even noticed until now. Each thread runs from rib to rib in elegant arcs, supporting the structure, keeping the ribs equidistant, and adding that faintly lacy texture you've seen on antique wagasa, traditional Japanese umbrellas, in museums. Naturally, you assume there's a ruler involved. There is not. The master squints. If you can't feel the right distance, you shouldn't be threading umbrellas. Historians still debate whether umbrella makers in Edo had secret apprenticeships within textile guilds or simply developed their own weaving sensibilities over time. What's clear is that this step is part embroidery, part engineering, and part exercise in not screaming when your thread gets tangled for the third time in 5 minutes. The umbrella's structure begins to change. With every thread tied, every rib gently pulled into alignment, the whole thing tightens, breathes almost. You become hyper-aware of tension, not just in the strings, but in your posture, your fingers, your very thoughts. The master hums a short song about tofu that you're pretty sure is a low-key insult. Your first try looks like a spider got lost. The second try is better, cleaner arcs, less sag. The master shows you how to burnish the knots slightly with the flat side of a shell button to make them lie flush against the paper. Another forgotten technique, another oddly precise object in this endlessly specific trade. By mid-morning, your umbrella looks like a work in progress instead of a complete disaster. That's progress. Now, you learn about the neck, the central hub where all the ribs meet at the top. It's made of a softwood plug, hand-carved and painted in lacquer to resist water. Into this, the reinforcement threads are anchored. With tension so specific, you're told to hum a note as you tie each one. If the pitch drops, it's too loose. If it squeaks, it'll snap in the rain. At this point, you no longer question these instructions. You hum, you tie, you begin to feel like a spider with performance anxiety. You pause to stretch, your back crackling like old parchment. The master offers you a snack, dried persimmon and roasted rice crackers, and tells you a story about a famous courtesan in Yoshiwara who had her umbrella sabotaged by a rival. According to him, the threads were cut ever so slightly, so the whole thing exploded outward mid-parade, dousing her in dirty canal water. She recovered, apparently, by laughing and turning it into a dance. The rival was shamed into becoming a nun. True? Maybe. Historians still argue whether these umbrella tales were real events or just cautionary gossip, embroidered into legend by idle artisans. Still, you check your knots twice. After lunch, it's time to test the umbrella. Not outside, too risky. Inside, with a breeze created by one of those hand-cranked fans. You hold your breath as you open it. There's a faint whisper of paper, shifting, a soft tug as the ribs extend, and then, shunk. It's open, wide, balanced, strong. The threads hold. The ribs flex just enough. And the shape, round, domed, precise, is enough to make you exhale and laugh, though your fingers still tremble from all the fine work. The master nods, says nothing, walks away. You follow him to the back of the workshop, where a small alcove holds completed umbrellas wrapped in protective cloth. He pulls one out and unrolls it. The paper is midnight blue, the ribs lacquered jet black. The threads form a radial web, so perfect it looks printed. This one, he says, took me 6 months. It was for a daimyo's daughter. She wanted something to match her new kimono. I lost 3 ribs to warping. Burned the 4th by accident. Almost gave up. You ask what happened? She didn't like the color. Wanted lavender. He shrugs. puts it back on the shelf. There's no bitterness, just a quiet affection for the effort itself. That's the lesson that slowly seeps into your bones. Not every umbrella will survive rain, or judgment, or the whims of feudal fashion. But the making, that is what matters. As evening settles, you light the paper lanterns one by one. Their warm glow reflects off the ribs of your umbrella, now resting open like a sleeping insect. You run your fingers over the threads, still taut, still humming their invisible song. Outside, someone walks past, carrying a cheap oil paper umbrella that flaps a little too much in the wind. You feel strangely protective of your own creation now. Tomorrow, the master says, we learn the handle joint. That's where they always crack if you get lazy. No pressure. You sleep that night with visions of thread and ribs and softly snapping knots. And in the quiet spaces between dreams, you swear you hear the faint rustle of paper unfolding itself, again and again. By now, the smell of lacquer and steamed rice has become your new cologne. You barely flinch when your fingers find another splinter hiding in a bamboo rib. Your knees creak in unison with the old floorboards. And yet, strangely, you're still here. Today's lesson is the handle joint, the invisible hinge, the quiet fulcrum, the uncelebrated backbone of the entire contraption. You know it's important because the master's mood shifts as soon as he says the word. He tightens his robe, rolls up his sleeves with a theatrical sigh, and mutters something about what separates a proper umbrella from a shameful pole. With dreams. The handle joint is where the shaft of the umbrella connects to the ribs and runner, the bit that slides to open and close it. And the problem is, in the Edo period, metal parts were rare and expensive, which means all of this must be done with wood, paper, bamboo, and string. Nothing clicks. Everything glides. At least that's the goal. You begin by whittling the central shaft, usually made of hinoki cypress or paulownia, down to a series of precise tapers. One end slots into the neck, which, if you remember, is the softwood plug, holding all the ribs together. The other end is often carved with decorative grooves or inlaid with subtle motifs. Apparently, a popular one among Edo merchants was a turtle shell pattern to encourage longevity, especially for umbrellas that kept getting lost at tea shops. Then comes the tricky part, crafting the runner, the sliding ring that opens and closes the umbrella. It's a delicate wooden ring, reinforced with paper and coated with a mixture of lacquer and oil for smooth motion. This ring must slide up the shaft without wobbling, but also without sticking. You try a test fit and, of course, it gets stuck halfway. The master pries it off with a chopstick and a stare that could curdle milk. Historians still argue whether the runner design was inspired by Chinese oil lamp mechanisms or if it developed from early Japanese scroll rollers. Either way, Edo-era runners are marvels of engineering, relying on perfect symmetry and a few drops of camellia oil to function. You sand, you polish, you sand again. Eventually the runner moves with a soft shuft, like a whisper down a hallway. You feel a flutter of pride, until the master hands you a new shaft and says, again, that one's for practice. While you repeat the process, he tells you about umbrella dances. Not the kind you see on kabuki stages, but the real-life ones performed by sellers trying to hawk their goods on rainy corners. With a quick flick, they'd open the umbrella, mid-spin, creating a sudden canopy that startled and impressed. Your runner sticks, he warns, and your umbrella won't open fast enough to charm anyone. Just soak their obi. By mid-morning, you've made 3 more runners, each slightly better than the last. Your palms are slick with oil, your thumbs aching. But the motion is finally smooth. Now it's time to join the parts. You thread a length of linen cord through the base of the ribs, loop it around the shaft, and tie it in a configuration the master calls dragonfly knot. It doesn't look like a dragonfly. It looks like math, but it works. When everything is assembled, shaft, ribs, runner, reinforcement threads, you're told to perform the first opening. You stand, umbrella upright, fingers on the ring. Slide. Cha! Ribs bloom outwards in a slow-motion unfurling, the paper rising like sails in a quiet wind. The threads hold. The lacquered tip gleams. And for a moment, you understand why some umbrella makers wept when they opened a finished piece for the first time. It's not just a tool, it's a ritual. The master breaks your reverie with a cough and a very flat. Don't get cocky. You retract the umbrella. It folds with a gentle sigh, the runner returning home with only the faintest resistance. You check the joint. Still tight. Still centered. The shaft hasn't cracked. The threads haven't slipped. Your hands are still attached. He nods once, then hands you a soft cloth and says, "Now take it apart. You'll make 2 more by sundown." Cue internal screaming. You get faster. Not good. Fast. Your 5th handle joint clicks into place with confidence. Your 6th opens cleanly. On your 7th, you accidentally glue the runner to the shaft. It takes you an hour to free it. You learn a new Edo-Era curse under the master's breath. It roughly translates to, "May your mochi never rise." He softens slightly by evening, offers you a seat by the window, where you can test your 3 best umbrellas in natural light. The sunset bleeds gold through the paper, turning each panel into a glowing petal. They look like oversized flowers. You feel oddly protective. There's one last test. Bounce. The master gently taps the handle against the floor. The ribs flex. The paper shudders. The umbrella absorbs the motion without cracking or crumpling. "Good elasticity," he murmurs, as if talking about tofu. This one might last a whole rainy season. You ask if umbrellas were ever passed down in families. "Sometimes," he says, "mostly as props for ghost stories. Apparently, there was a belief that umbrellas, especially ones left unopened for too long, could house wandering spirits. There's even a specific yokai, Karakasa Obake, a haunted umbrella with 1 eye and a long tongue. It hops around at night, looking for the owner who forgot it. You think it sounds adorable." The master shakes his head. "You'd say that, until it licks you." You finish the day exhausted but content. The umbrellas stand in a row, tips down, as if waiting for applause. Tomorrow, you're told, you'll learn weatherproofing techniques, how Edo umbrellas were, treated to withstand real storms, not just drizzle and admiration. You fall asleep that night with the smell of camellia oil in your hair, and the sound of sliding runners echoing through your dreams. You wake up to rain tapping gently on the tiled roof, like the world itself is testing your progress. Perfect timing, because today it's all about weatherproofing, turning a fragile web of bamboo, thread, and washi paper into a portable shield, against the unpredictable tantrums of the sky. You stretch, wince at a newly acquired bruise on your hip, umbrella accidents are real, and shuffle back into the workshop, where the master is already waiting with an ominous-looking wooden bucket. "Oil day," he announces, handing you a brush with bristles made from horsehair. "Don't get it on your teeth. Tastes like fermented. Regret." You peer into the bucket. The smell is strong, smoky, earthy, a bit like roasted sesame but heavier. It's tung oil, sometimes mixed with linseed or perilla oil, carefully filtered, aged for weeks, and stirred with charcoal powder for extra water resistance. According to Edo tradition, this oily blend seeps into the paper and creates an invisible membrane that repels rain while letting the umbrella breathe. Much like how your nose is currently trying to breathe around the fumes. Historians still argue whether these oil mixtures were a standard guild recipe or jealously guarded family secrets. What's agreed upon is that the process required patience, precision, and very good ventilation. You begin the task. With long, even strokes, you coat the outside of the umbrella. It's hypnotic work. The paper darkens slightly with each pass, taking on a warm sheen. The brush glides, catches, then glides again. You fall into a rhythm, and soon the scent becomes less of an assault and more of a background hum, like wood smoke on a damp day. The oil soaks in slowly. This is not a quick fix. After the first coat, you wait, and wait. Hours, sometimes. The paper needs to absorb it like skin soaking up lotion. Too much, and it buckles. Too little, and it flakes. So, you dry the umbrellas upright, watching tiny rivulets drip from the ribs like tears. The master explains that most umbrellas took 3 to 5 oilings before they were considered ready. Good ones took 7, he adds, gesturing to a red lacquered beauty hanging in the rafters like an elegant bat. That one survived a typhoon. Mostly. You spend the day layering. Between coats, you polish the ribs with beeswax to seal, inflexibility, and use a cotton cloth to gently buff the paper surface until it shines. It's strangely satisfying, like watching a soggy rice cracker turn into a porcelain plate. By late afternoon, you attempt a light water test. You hold your most recently oiled umbrella over a gently steaming kettle. The paper fogs, but no moisture, penetrates. Beads of condensation form and roll off like marbles. It works. Still, the master warns you not to get cocky. First rain always finds the lazy corner, which is why he insists on a final weatherproofing step, smoke curing. This part involves an iron brazier, a lattice of sticks, and a whole lot of coughing. You suspend the umbrellas over the low coals and slowly rotate them in the rising smoke. It smells like pine resin and old temples. The idea is to drive off any last bits of moisture, harden the oil layers, and create a subtle scent that Edo customers associated with fresh and trustworthy. You think it smells like a haunted tea ceremony. While you turn the umbrellas, the master tells you that in the old days, umbrella stalls in marketplaces would light incense and slightly smoke their umbrellas just before opening shop. It gave them a just-made aura, even if the umbrellas had been sitting in storage for weeks. Marketing, Edo style. As you rotate your piece, a sudden gust from the open window catches the edge of the umbrella and lifts it slightly. Just enough to make your heart leap. You catch it, barely, and check for damage. None. Strong ribs, tight threads, sealed joints, oiled and cured. You finally have something that could survive more than a drizzle. The master rewards you with sweet potato snacks and a lecture on umbrella pricing in the Edo market. Apparently, a well-made umbrella could cost more than a month's worth of tofu, especially if it had decorative painting or rare paper. Some were even considered wedding gifts or heirlooms. You're still chewing when he shows you an odd one. Translucent, with a slightly fishy smell. He grins. Fish glue varnish. Some old school makers used it. Supposed to glow under moonlight. You nod slowly. Supposed to is doing a lot of work in that sentence. Historians still debate whether fish glue umbrellas were practical or purely decorative. You suspect the latter, unless the smell was considered a form of mosquito repellent. Before the day ends, the master hands you your oiled umbrella and gestures outside. Take it for a walk. You blink. In the rain? He raises an eyebrow. What better test? So you step out into the drizzle. The street glistens. Roofs weep. Cicadas drone somewhere nearby, unbothered. You open the umbrella slowly, shft, and lift it overhead. Raindrops hit the oiled paper with the softest patter. Not a splatter, not a splosh. Just a whispering percussion, like someone tapping a koto string far away. The ribs flex slightly in the breeze. The handle stays dry in your grip. Your shoulder, protected. Your heart, full. You walk a few quiet blocks, past vendors rolling up their canvas stalls, past a cat sleeping under a cart, tail flicking, past an old woman carrying pickled daikon in a cloth bundle. Not one drop seeps through. You return to the workshop soaked below the waist, but triumphant. The master eyes the umbrella, checks the tips, tests the joints, then, without looking up, he says, "Tomorrow we paint." Your eyebrows rise. Decorative painting. He nods. The umbrella has bones, skin, and breath. Now it gets its face. You hang up your umbrella to dry, your arms still tingling from the experience, your mind already sketching possibilities. Will you paint a crane, a mountain, a wheel of plum blossoms, maybe a pattern of quiet raindrops? You arrive early the next morning, still damp at the cuffs from last night's victory walk. The workshop smells faintly of old wood, oil, and fresh ink. On the table sits a tray of brushes, some thin as cat whiskers, others thick and blunt, like temple drums, and a row of shallow ceramic dishes filled with muted pigments, indigo, vermilion, pine soot black, and a green that looks like moss after a spring rain. Time to give it soul, the master says, handing you a brush with a bristle tip so fine it might as well be made from angel eyelashes. Today, you learn that Edo-era umbrellas weren't just tools. They were statements. To walk through the rain with a painted umbrella was to tell the world something. I have taste. I am careful. Or, in some bolder cases, I'd rather die than be ordinary. Decorative painting began once the oiling process was complete and cured. If you did it before, the colors would run like bad gossip. The surface now is lightly tacky, enough to hold pigment without smudging. You sit with your best umbrella open before you, ribs taut and ready. But before you touch brush to paper, the master makes you practice on scrap, again and again, until your lines curve like wind, and your sakura blossoms stop looking like crushed dumplings. The most common Edo designs you learn were simple geometric shapes, concentric circles, stripes, radial patterns. These weren't just aesthetic, they were practical. Circles centered the eye, stripes masked seams, and radial lines echoed the structure of the ribs beneath. The balance was deliberate, like calligraphy. You try a few arcs. Your first one wobbles like a tipsy snake. The master hums disapprovingly. You paint with your wrist, paint with your breath. So you exhale, gently, and let the next line flow from your shoulder. It straightens, not perfect, but alive. Some umbrellas bore seasonal motifs, plum blossoms for spring, maple leaves for autumn, snowflakes if you wanted to tempt fate. Others had animals, cranes, koi, rabbits leaping over moons. If you were wealthy enough to commission a piece, you could get poetry brushed in elegant kana along the rim. Imagine blocking the rain with a haiku. One surviving Edo umbrella, you're told, had a secret love letter painted on the inside, visible only when opened. Historians still debate whether it was ever delivered or just admired from a careful distance. You decide on a simple wave motif. Hokusai you are not, but you've stared at enough streams lately to feel confident. Your brush dips into the indigo, the color like melted dusk, and you begin. One crest, one curl, one swell at a time. The paper absorbs the pigment unevenly, giving the waves a soft watercolor bleed. It's unintentional. It's perfect. The master watches without comment for several minutes. Then, quietly, he says, "Try layering vermilion. Just a hint." You add it. The wave tips glow like they've caught firelight. He nods. Better. There's a fringe belief, he tells you as you work, that umbrellas, once painted, took on a kind of spirit. Not quite sentient, but aware. Respectful umbrellas lasted longer. Ignored ones cracked in revenge. It's not an official teaching, more like an old superstition passed down in lacquered whispers. Paint like someone's watching, he advises, because something might be. The hours pass in a breeze of brushstrokes and daydreams. You paint quietly, focused, hands steady, each rib an arc of possibility. You smudge a blossom accidentally, then transform it into a bird mid-flight. The master doesn't scold you. Accidents, he murmurs, are just designs you didn't mean to think of yet. By late afternoon, your umbrella is a swirl of waves and flame-tipped crests, anchored by a ring of black pine needle brushwork near the hub. It looks both ancient and freshly rained on. You're almost afraid to open it, but you do. Slowly, carefully, letting the ribs rise like petals. The full design blossoms into view. You hold it up to the light, and the colors glow faintly through the paper, diffuse like sunlight through leaves. You realize then that the painted umbrella is not meant to be admired closed, or even indoors. Its canvas is the sky. Its audience is the weather. The master examines it, runs a finger along one painted wave, taps once on the handle. Then he gestures to the wall. You mount it beside your earlier plain umbrellas. It stands out, not better, just bolder, like it has something to say. You catch the master eyeing it again, his expression unreadable. You don't need praise. The umbrella speaks for itself. Later that evening, you help the master clean the brushes, rinsing them carefully in water scented with pine ash, reshaping the bristles with your fingers. He tells you that some brush makers named their best tools, not out of vanity, but gratitude. This one's called Spring Silence, he says, handing you a stubby little brush worn nearly to a nub. Painted the emperor's wife's umbrella. You blink. Seriously? He shrugs. Probably. That night, you hang your freshly painted umbrella upside down, tipped to the ceiling, to cure fully. The oil beneath the pigment catches the candlelight. It doesn't look like a tool anymore. It looks like something ceremonial. Tomorrow, the master says, you'll learn about customers, how umbrellas moved through the hands of buyers, couriers, actors, and thieves, and what it meant to lose one. You sleep under its shadow and dream of waves. You wake up to the aroma of grilled rice balls and a subtle anxiety buzzing in your chest. Today is market day. Not for you to buy, though you do briefly fantasize about a new pair of socks without mysterious stains, but to observe how umbrellas are sold, bartered, flirted over, and inevitably mishandled by customers who do not appreciate bamboo craftsmanship the way they should. The master hands you a bento box and a folded umbrella, your plain one, not the painted wave beauty. That one's still curing, he says. Take this instead. It's humble, like you. Rude, but fair. You set out through the winding streets of Edo, umbrella tucked under your arm, trying not to look like someone who just learned what tongue oil was yesterday. The town buzzes with soft clatter. Vendors unfurling awnings, samurai children squabbling over candied chestnuts, monks passing silently with bowls that never seem empty. You head toward Nihonbashi, Edo's commercial heart, and the hub for umbrella stalls. Back then, these stalls weren't just little booths. Some were full-fledged umbrella emporiums, often run by families who'd been selling nothing but umbrellas for generations. Some offered repairs on site. Others let you test models in little rain-simulating booths using buckets and ingenuity. Historians still argue whether the earliest umbrella markets were seasonal or year-round, but most agree they peaked during the rainy months, especially Tsuyu, Japan's long, moody, wet season when the sky can't decide whether it's crying or sweating. You arrive at a stall where the master clearly knows the owner. A woman in her 60s with hands like crumpled paper and eyes that miss nothing. She glances at your umbrella and grunts approvingly. Straight ribs, decent weight. You didn't varnish the cap, did you? You did. A little. She rolls her eyes but lets you watch as she lays out her wares. Plain umbrellas for shopkeepers, lacquered ones for couriers, bold red and black models for kabuki actors who wanted to make an entrance in any weather. There's even a tiny child-sized one with a bell tied to the handle. For wanderers, she explains. Customers trickle in. A merchant gripes about prices. A young couple giggles as they test an umbrella together, holding it between them like a shared secret. A samurai sets down a blade to pick up a deep indigo umbrella with a white crane painted beneath the ribs, visible only when opened, and even then, only if the light's just right. You notice one curious thing. No two umbrellas are exactly the same. Even the mass-produced ones bear the hand of the maker. A slightly longer rib, a curl in the pattern, a brushstroke that looks like a mistake until it feels intentional. Umbrellas weren't just sold, they were evaluated, felt, judged. Some were snapped open and closed repeatedly to test the tension. Others were sniffed. Yes, sniffed. For that subtle scent of oil and smoke that whispered, "This umbrella has been seen." The stall owner tells you that during the height of the Edo period, some umbrella makers included a paper charm inside the joint, just a small blessing for safe travel. Others inscribed poems inside the spokes, invisible to everyone except those who looked very, very closely. You ask if customers ever return them. Rarely, she says. If it breaks, they assume they deserved it. If it lasts, they brag. Umbrella theft, surprisingly, was also a problem in Edo, especially after a rain. Walk into a tea shop with your best umbrella, come out 10 minutes later, and poof, gone. One popular fix was to tie a red thread around your handle, a small mark to ward off greedy fingers, or to paint something so uniquely ugly on it that no one wanted it. You try to imagine painting a large toad eating tofu. Tempting. Some umbrellas were rented, especially in busy entertainment districts. The rental system worked on trust. You left a coin deposit and a name. If you didn't return it, the stall owner might send a runner to your house, or worse, shame you in the public square with your name on a chalkboard of dishonor. Kobayashi, umbrella hoarder. You assist the stall owner for the afternoon, learning what sells. Lightweight ones with tighter ribs are popular among women. Broader models, usually dark lacquered, are favored by men who need something that doubles as a walking stick and low-key status symbol. But the real drama unfolds when a geisha arrives. Her umbrella is torn, probably from someone stepping on it during a rain-soaked performance exit, and she's not happy. She speaks to the stall owner with the precision of a sword drawn very slowly. You watch, fascinated, as the two women debate repair costs, oiling methods, and the scandal of a courtesan who once used a Kyoto-style umbrella in Edo. Cultural treason, the geisha huffs. Eventually, they settle on a repair, and you're given the honor of inspecting the torn paper. It's high-grade washi with gold flecks. Probably cost more than your weekly rice allotment. You nod solemnly and promise not to make it worse. The stall owner claps your shoulder. Not bad for a paper apprentice. The sky begins to darken, and customers thin out. You fold your own umbrella and notice how naturally it now fits into your hand. Not just as an object, but as something lived in. Yours. The master appears beside you, holding a roasted chestnut. You see? He says, nodding at the nearly empty stall. We don't just make umbrellas. We make stories people can walk through. You chew on that as you walk home. The street slicks with puddles. A man nearby opens an umbrella you recognize from the stall. Radial stripes, bright red tips. It looks alive in the twilight. Intentional. Back in the workshop, you set your painted umbrella upright to admire it again. But now, you're thinking about how someone might choose it, what it says, what it asks the rain. Tomorrow, you learn about couriers and their umbrella tricks. For now, you dream of the market, of silent deals, stolen glances, and umbrellas as shields, signals, and subtle revolutions. The next morning, you find yourself walking the narrow alleys leading to the Courier Guild's modest headquarters. In Edo, couriers weren't just fast runners or riders. They were the lifeblood of communication, carrying letters, packages, and sometimes secrets beneath the canopy of their trusty umbrellas. You learn quickly that these umbrellas were not ordinary rain shields. They were coded messages, badges of identity, and even weapons in disguise. The guild hall smells of ink, old wood, and sweat, a heady mix that speaks of countless footsteps and whispered conversations. You're introduced to Kaito, a seasoned courier whose umbrella is battered but reliable, its faded paint hinting at stories too numerous to count. He tells you that umbrellas were customized not just for weather, but for performance. Lightweight. For speed. Reinforced for defense. You hold Kaito's umbrella, feeling the weight of history in your hands. He explains how couriers develop subtle techniques to open and close umbrellas silently, avoiding detection during covert missions. A soft flick here, a gentle press there. Movements practiced until they became second nature. You try your hand at these maneuvers, fumbling at first, but gradually finding a rhythm. The guild master watches, amused but encouraging, reminding you that speed without grace is just clumsiness. Kaito shares a curious tale of a courier who once hid a tiny scroll within the umbrella's shaft, evading capture during a political scandal. Historians still debate whether the story is fact or folklore, but the idea captivates you. As the day progresses, you learn how umbrellas served as visual codes, specific colors and patterns signaling roots, ranks, or affiliations within the guild. A blue and white striped umbrella meant one district, a solid black one, another. This system helped couriers navigate the labyrinthine city efficiently and safely. You observe a training session where younger couriers practice running through rain simulations, umbrellas held just so to minimize drag while maximizing cover. The sound of feet splashing and fabric rustling creates a soothing, rhythmic backdrop. Kaito offers insight into the social status of couriers, respected yet often overlooked. Their umbrellas, therefore, became symbols of pride and professionalism. Losing or damaging one could mean more than inconvenience. It could jeopardize their reputation. You practice folding and unfolding your umbrella with increasing confidence, imagining the countless steps and stories it might witness if it belonged to a courier. The afternoon fades into evening as you help. Repair a frayed umbrella tip, reflecting on how these simple objects bridge the gap between survival and style, secrecy and service. You leave the guild with a newfound appreciation for the silent messengers of Edo, their umbrellas whispering tales of speed, loyalty, and subtle rebellion against the rain. You step out of the Courier Guild into a gentle drizzle, your umbrella now feeling less like a tool and more like a companion. The rain's soft patter on the paper canopy is oddly soothing, like a whispered secret from centuries past. Today, You're going deeper into a lesser-known aspect of Edo umbrellas, their role in the theater districts, where performance and practicality intertwined in curious ways. Walking toward the bustling quarters of Asakusa, the air thick with incense, fried food scents, and murmurs of anticipation, you notice umbrellas everywhere, leaning against tea, houses, carried by patrons, twirling in the hands of performers. But here, umbrellas were not just shields against rain. They were props, symbols, even secret codes for the actors and courtesans. You find yourself at a small, dimly lit workshop tucked between paper lantern shops. The master umbrella painter here specializes in theatrical designs, dramatic colors, bold patterns, and hidden symbols known only to performers. He greets you with a nod and hands you a crimson umbrella adorned with gold dragons curling sinuously across its surface. Umbrellas in theater, he explains, carry emotion. They speak louder than words when the stage is dark and the spotlight scarce. You learn that kabuki actors, for instance, used umbrellas to convey character traits or mood shifts. A villain might wield a black lacquered umbrella with jagged, white patterns, while a heroine might hold a delicate pink parasol speckled with cherry blossoms. The opening and closing of these umbrellas punctuated scenes, heightening tension or signaling transitions. The painter shows you how he creates these designs, layering pigments with painstaking care. Some umbrellas bore metallic paints that shimmered under stage lights, while others hid messages within the brush strokes. Names of famous plays, favorite verses, or inside jokes among troupe members. You try your hand at a small detail, a delicate crane unfolding its wings. The brush feels different here, more expressive, less restrained. You imagine the umbrella spinning in the hands of an actor, catching light as they perform a climactic scene. A curious tidbit emerges. Some performers believed their umbrellas held protective spirits, blessing their performances and guarding against mishaps. This belief added a layer of reverence to the umbrella's care and use. Historians still argue whether this was widespread superstition or limited to select troupes, but its persistence speaks to the umbrella's cultural weight. You watch rehearsals from a quiet corner as actors practice their cues, umbrellas twirling and snapping open with precise timing. The rhythmic sound blends with the rain outside, creating a hypnotic lullaby. By the end of the day, you understand that umbrellas in Edo theater were more than props. They were storytellers, mood setters, and silent partners in the drama of life. As you walk back, the rain lessens, and your umbrella closes with a soft click, leaving you pondering the delicate balance between art and utility in every crafted rib and brush stroke. You wake to a still, misty morning where the city feels wrapped in a delicate silk shawl of fog. Today, your focus shifts to the daily rituals of umbrella care, an often overlooked but essential part of the umbrella maker's trade secrets. How did Edo's craftsmen and users keep these delicate constructions sturdy and beautiful, especially in the face of relentless rain and humidity? The workshop smells of linseed oil and cedar shavings as you join the master and his apprentice in the early light. You watch as they gently disassemble an umbrella, removing the washi paper canopy to inspect the bamboo ribs underneath. This ritual, repeated seasonally, extends the life of an umbrella and preserves its delicate charm. You learn about the traditional waterproofing methods, primarily the use of tung oil, pressed from the seeds of the tung tree. The oil is applied, carefully, layer upon layer, to the paper canopy, creating a translucent shield against water. The oil's subtle, earthy scent fills the air, a comforting aroma that marks the arrival of the rainy season. The master shows you how to avoid over-oiling, which can cause the paper to become brittle and lose its delicate flexibility. He smiles, wryly, as he mentions the legendary umbrella maker who once flooded a batch with too much oil, turning them into soggy, drooping messes. Not all oils are created equal, he chuckles. You assist in the drying process, where the umbrellas are hung open in well-ventilated spaces, avoiding direct sunlight to prevent discoloration. The ambient sounds of rustling paper and soft creaks of bamboo make this routine feel like a slow dance between craft and nature. A fringe fact surprises you. Some makers incorporated natural insect repellents, tiny sachets of herbs like mugwort, tucked into the umbrella handles to ward off pests that might nibble on the bamboo or paper during storage. You hear debates among the craftsmen about whether the best drying method involves open-air hanging or gentle smoke curing. Both have merits, but each leaves a distinct scent and subtle mark on the finished umbrella. Historians still argue which technique was truly superior or more traditional. The Apprentice shares stories of umbrella owners who treated their umbrellas like members of the family, bringing them to seasonal festivals and even whispering thanks after storms. You smile at this, something that feels entirely natural once you've handled these objects. As the day fades, you help reassemble a newly varnished umbrella, feeling the satisfying snap as ribs lock into place. You marvel at how much care goes into maintenance, realizing that crafting is only half the story. Preserving beauty and function is an art in itself. With your hands slightly sticky from oil and your mind drifting, you fold your own umbrella and tuck it away, already anticipating tomorrow's lessons on umbrella symbolism in Edo's complex social dance. The day dawns clear and crisp, the city humming softly beneath a pale sun. Today, you delve into the curious and quietly captivating world of umbrella symbolism in Edo society. How these delicate structures were far more than weather shields. They were woven into social customs, identity, and even subtle power plays. You join a small gathering at a tea house where merchants, samurai, and artists mingle, umbrellas resting by their feet or balanced on laps like treasured artifacts. Here, umbrellas act as silent signifiers. The pattern, color, and even the wear on an umbrella broadcast the owner's status, occupation, and personal tastes. You watch a samurai delicately unfold a deep blue umbrella with a silver family crest, an unmistakable badge of honor and lineage. Nearby, a merchant sports a plain, sturdy black umbrella, signaling practicality over pomp. A geisha's slender parasol is adorned with intricate pink and gold blossoms, whispering elegance without a word. You learn that certain colors and motifs were reserved for specific classes or occasions. Purple was a noble hue, forbidden to commoners, while gold leaf embellishments were a luxury only the wealthiest could afford. The act of borrowing or gifting an umbrella carried nuanced social meanings, akin to exchanging secret notes or handshakes. You hear about umbrella-related etiquette, how opening or closing an umbrella in someone's presence could signal respect, displeasure, or even flirtation. For example, closing your umbrella before entering a home was considered polite, but doing so too early or too late could send unintended messages. A quirky fact catches your attention. Some Edo-era lovers exchanged tiny paper charms hidden inside their umbrellas as secret tokens of affection. Historians still debate whether this practice was widespread or the stuff of romantic legend, but the idea persists in old love poems and theater scripts. You observe a merchant carefully wrapping his umbrella before presenting it as a gift, explaining that the wrapping itself, a simple yet elegant cloth, was part of the ritual, symbolizing care and thoughtfulness. As twilight approaches, you stroll through the quiet streets, umbrella in hand, feeling the subtle weight of these layered meanings. You realize that each umbrella is a personal statement, a coded language of materials and artistry, gently communicating who you are before a single word is spoken. The city's rhythm slows with the setting sun, and your thoughts drift, appreciating how these delicate, often overlooked objects bridged practicality and social poetry in Edo's complex tapestry. The morning sun filters softly through paper screens as you return to the workshop, ready to explore the mysterious materials that made Edo umbrellas both beautiful and durable. Today you'll trace the journey of bamboo, from forest to frame, and uncover the delicate art of selecting and shaping each piece with meticulous care. You begin with a walk to the nearby mountains, where the thin, straight stalks of bamboo grow in serene groves. The local harvesters, experts passed down through generations, hand-select stalks that are neither too young nor too old, ideal for creating ribs that are both flexible and strong. You feel the slight roughness of the freshly cut bamboo under your fingers, its faint scent, earthy and fresh. Back in the workshop, the master craftsman shows you how the bamboo is split and planed, smoothing the outer surface while preserving the inner strength. The thin strips are steamed and bent carefully, shaped over wooden molds to achieve the precise curve that will support the umbrella's canopy. You try bending a strip yourself, feeling the tension between patience and pressure. It's a quiet, meditative process. Too much force and the bamboo snaps. Too little and it won't hold its shape. The master explains how they reinforce the joints with tiny bamboo pins and natural adhesives made from rice starch. The materials are chosen for their lightness and eco-friendliness, a testament to Edo artisans' deep respect for nature's gifts. A quirky detail surfaces. Some makers added secret markings, tiny notches or symbols burned into the ribs, serving as signatures or quality marks, almost like an artist's hidden brushstroke. Historians still debate whether these marks were purely practical or held mystical significance. You marvel at the quiet resilience of bamboo, how it bends in storms but rarely breaks, perfectly suited to the unpredictable weather of Edo. As the day unfolds, you watch the assembly of ribs into the framework, each one locking into place with a satisfying click. The umbrella begins to take shape, a marriage of natural material and human ingenuity. By evening, you hold a nearly finished frame, imagining how the delicate paper canopy will soon come alive with color and life. The bamboo feels alive, like the bones of a living creature, flexible yet steadfast, ready to shelter countless steps in the rain. You close your eyes for a moment, listening to the soft creaks and whispers of wood, feeling a deep connection to the centuries-old craft. The sky softens to a pale gray, hinting at the approach of evening rain. Today, you immerse yourself in the finishing touches, the delicate art of decorating Edo umbrellas with paints, inks, and subtle gilding that elevate each piece into a work of art. Back in the workshop, the painter spreads out brushes of various sizes, pots of mineral pigments, and trays of shimmering gold leaf. You watch as a master painter begins to sketch a design, a flowing wave pattern meant to evoke both the sea and the fleeting nature of life, a favorite Edo motif. You learn how artisans prepared the paper canopy beforehand, applying a thin coat of glue to create a smooth, receptive surface. The pigments are mixed carefully with water and glue, allowing the paint to seep into the fibers gently without cracking or peeling. You attempt a few brushstrokes yourself, marveling at how the paint slides smoothly, creating delicate gradients of blue and green. The painter laughs softly at your tentative efforts, encouraging you to embrace the slow rhythm of the work. A surprising tidbit surfaces. Some umbrella painters used crushed shells or powdered precious stones to add subtle sparkle to the designs. Details, only visible under certain lights or from close angles, like hidden messages to those who knew where to look. You hear debates among art historians about whether some patterns held coded meanings, possibly linked to guild rivalries or political sympathies, though no definitive proof exists. This mystery adds a layer of intrigue to each brushstroke. As the day darkens, the painted umbrellas are carefully dried and then treated with a final layer of oil to protect the colors and give a faint sheen. The scent of drying paint mingles with the lingering aroma of tung oil and wood. You notice how the umbrellas transform from mere tools into personal statements, their delicate beauty inviting admiration even in the grayest weather. With a practiced flick, the master opens one of the finished umbrellas, its vibrant colors shimmering softly in the dim light. You feel a gentle thrill, like witnessing a hidden treasure come to life. Walking home beneath your own plain umbrella, you reflect on the layers of care, skill, and artistry woven into each piece. Proof that even the simplest object can carry a world of meaning. The rain begins with a soft whisper, a gentle tapping that seems to sync with your own steady breathing. Now, as your journey through Edo-era umbrella making nears its close, you reflect on the enduring legacy of these delicate creations. How they bridged utility and art, nature and culture, survival and style. You wander through the quiet streets, noticing umbrellas leaning against doorways, resting in the hands of passers-by, silent witnesses to daily life. Each one carries the invisible imprint of the craftsman's hands and the wearer's story. You remember the bamboo ribs that bend but do not break, the paper carefully waterproofed with tung oil, the subtle painted designs shimmering faintly in the rain. You recall couriers navigating the maze of Edo, their umbrellas coded and practiced like secret weapons, and actors twirling parasols that spoke louder than words on stage. You think of the daily rituals of care, the seasonal oiling, drying, mending, how these acts of preservation mirror our own need to nurture and protect what we value. The umbrellas, much like us, require patience and gentle attention to endure the storms. You feel the weight of history in your hands, a tangible link to a world where even the smallest object held layers of meaning, whispered secrets, and quiet pride. Historians still debate many details, the origins of certain designs, the extent of symbolic codes, but the human story woven into these umbrellas remains clear and captivating. As the rain eases into a mist, you fold your umbrella carefully, as if tucking away a fragile memory. You walk slowly, the sound of raindrops fading into the night's hush, feeling a gentle calm settling over you. The Edo umbrella makers crafted more than rain shields. They created companions for life's journeys, blending art, nature, and subtle communication into every rib and fold. And now, with that thought, you let the city's soft sounds cradle you as you drift into rest. The rain has softened into a gentle murmur, a lullaby sung by the night itself. As you settle deeper into your space, feel the slow cadence of your breath matching the quiet rhythm outside. Imagine the cool touch of bamboo ribs beneath your fingertips, the faint scent of oil and ink, and the soft rustle of paper opening like a whispered invitation to dreams. The world of Edo umbrellas fades softly, leaving behind a calm warmth, a connection to craftspeople who turned simple materials into stories, care, and beauty. Let that gentle legacy wrap around you now, soothing and steady, like the steady tap of raindrops on your own umbrella. Close your eyes, breathe out any lingering thoughts, and surrender to the quiet magic of the night. Tomorrow is another day, but for now, rest in the peaceful shelter of history's gentle embrace. Sweet dreams.